Hi, my name is Raleigh Wilkins. I'm the founder of Sales Platoon and also former U.S. Marine. And if you're looking at hiring U.S. military, one of the jobs that I have in our organization is to make sure that you're not only military friendly, but that you're military ready. And there's a big difference between the two. The physical distance that separates our bases from the U.S. population can only be a matter of a few feet. But the psychological journey that a military member needs to make the transition from active duty to being an active participant in your organization can be quite a journey. And so the reason for that, and what I'm going to walk through in this very short video, is there's three things that separate our U.S. military from our civilian counterparts. And although when we look at the resume, the DD-214, and then the job application, and we say, wow, there's a lot of correlation here, you need to be aware that when you take them into your organization, that there is a change and a transition of mores, values, customs, and courtesies that needs to occur. And if your company's not prepared for that, regardless of the MOS relatability, that military member is going to struggle. The three things that separate our U.S. military from the civilian counterparts can be boiled down to the essence of these three different things. One is every military member went through a boot camp. Two, they all wore a uniform. And three, we were all subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The boot camp puts them in a less 1% of the population that attempts something that most people will never even try in their entire life. They've gone through a rigorously designed process that transformed the way that they look at the world around them and prepared them to do what most people don't ever want to think about doing, which is going to war. And so going through that process, there's a transformation that occurs. And the main transformation that occurs is from being self-centered to being other-centered and mission-oriented. Essentially, as I was talking to one of our counterparts and one of a good friend, the sales platoon, Rod Hairston from Trusum, he was saying that essentially what everything in business school attempts to do is to take the lessons of the U.S. military that we learn about organization, organizational development, service to others, and distill it into truths. And they try to teach those minus the significant emotional event. And that significant emotional event happens in boot camp for our U.S. military. And so they graduate from this boot camp and they've been set aside. Like when I went to Marine Corps boot camp, the first thing they dropped was individualization and the use of the word I. So that by the time I left, I was a U.S. Marine and my core ethos was the mission at hand, followed closely by anyone that I was responsible for to make sure they get home. And then there was me. And so putting myself last is one of the things that was attractive to employers, but it's really challenging when you have somebody that lives their ethos that way that doesn't know how to guide and navigate when they go out into the civilian world. And as Rod says so well, they have to pick up the mantle of self-worth again and learn to wear it in a way that's effective and efficient. The second thing is we all wear uniform. In the civilian world, we don't wear uniforms. You can wear pretty much whatever you want within some mores and constraints and customs. But in the military world, everybody wore military. And one of the reasons for that was I can look at your rank insignia, know how to address you in one of the world's last caste systems. I know where you've been by looking at your ribbon bars to see, what your personal awards were, maybe where you've been deployed. I also can see how long you've been in and maybe your job code. But then I can also look and see your nameplate. So I know a Lieutenant Colonel Holcomb, Sergeant Wilkins, I know I got to address him as its rank. And it's a way for me to learn everyone in an organization instantly to know how to deploy that. And it makes a lot of sense in war. But it's going to be really challenging when you go in the civilian world and everybody's wearing a purple collared shirt or whatever they're wearing. I don't know who you are and what role you're in. And I don't know how to navigate that. And for all its faults and all of its strengths, one of the things that college does is prepares you and socializes you for the business world. That's not something our military members have been doing. So the third thing is that we're all subject to the UCMJ, which is exactly like it's a set of rules, codes, conducts, and laws that's exactly like being a U.S. citizen, except for you give away half your rights and all your freedom. So there's no First Amendment right. You can't be where you want. You can go to jail for lying, faking sick, and cheating on your spouse. And so while we may think that that's a really good thing, and there's a lot of reasons for that, military order and discipline, that does not translate to the civilian population. And so when you go from that ethos that you lived by, the warrior's creed, and you go into the civilian world, making that transition again and figuring out what your own moral and personal compass is can be really challenging. Now, you may think, I'm an employer. What do I need to do to prepare for this? One of these things is to have a veterans resource group or an activity for them to be able to have an outlet to make that transition as they come into your organization. All three of those things prepared them to be respectful, disciplined, hold themselves to higher standards, integrity, all the things that you're going to want from your employees. And yet you need to have that wrench in place so that when they show up day one, there is a path for them to be onboarded. There is HR availability for them, and that they do have other veterans, whether in the organization or resource groups, for them to go to talk through that transition. Because all the benefits are yours when you want to hire a military veteran, and we are driven, disciplined people. And most of us don't want to hand out, we want to hand up. And so give that hand, extend the hand and hire a veteran, bring them into your organization, but make sure that you're prepared for that transition. And I'm shooting a similar video for our U.S. military because they also need to be prepared for that transition. So these are just some of the thoughts as I go through, and I've gotten to have hundreds of conversations with veterans over the last couple of years and with organizations that want to hire them. And it's one of the soft skills piece that we need to make sure we put in place and that we do for your organization at Sales Platoon before we even put a candidate with you. Because it's important that you understand that I'm taking them through a 14-week process, sometimes up to a 1-year apprenticeship, to prepare them for the rigors of business. And it's not just about teaching them the skill set. It's about how do I navigate the streets of Chicago with a map of Paris.